everybody, and welcome to yet another episode of Twice as Lively with Ken Heckenlively. That would be me, your host. And today, the question is, how do you find maximum creativity? That's right. How do you find your flow for maximum creativity? Well, the way I always like to start is with a little bit of wonderful Pete's Coffee. Not a sponsor, although they probably should be. And it could only help their brand to be associated with my brand. But why do I like Pete's Coffee? Because it is the tastiest coffee I know. And it always gives me that excellent caffeine boost. So I can deliver the best show possible to you. And did I mention that you're looking very good these days? Have you lost weight? Have you been working out? Have you been watching what you eat? Do you have a new hairstylist? Have you upgraded your wardrobe? Because you really are looking very sexy today. So, as we begin with that simultaneous sip, get your coffee. We are still in the morning hours, so it is a social faux pas to have alcohol in your beverage of choice. But if you choose to do that, I won't judge you because I'm kind of a non judgy kind of guy. All right, get your beverage ready. We'll do that simultaneous sip. Here we go. Ah, so delicious, so delicious. And if my throat gets a little bit dry, well, then I go to the coffee. So in a half hour of talking, my throat might get a little bit dry, but don't worry. I've always got that wonderful Pete's Coffee to help with that. All right, in preparation for today's show, I was thinking about this concept of flow. And this is something that I've heard from both athletes, like my wonderful trainer, Eddie Silky Smooth Abasolo, champion Muay Thai fighter, and I've also heard it from artists. And flow refers to that state that you get into in which things come easily. And isn't that the way we want to live our lives, with things coming easily, with having much less struggle in whatever it is we're doing? So I was thinking about this because at a recent writers group meeting, there was a discussion about where creativity comes from. Does it come from the human brain, or is it something that we tap into? Now, it can sound sort of woo-woo-y to talk about just tuning into something, but I happen to feel that there is something strange in our brains, which I call the meditative state. And I'm not necessarily saying that something psychic is coming into you, but there is something very liberating about just letting your mind go, letting it free associate. And so I'm much more in the frame of mind that the way to be most creative is just to relax and see what comes into your brain. You're not really thinking that you're going to do this and you're going to do that and it's going to go this way. And so as I was thinking about my own creative process, I thought, I want to tap into this question about the creative process. And I want to do it with some authority. And so I was thinking about how the ancients always talked about the muse. And muse is both a verb and a noun. And I thought, well, it would be kind of interesting to examine the word muse as both a verb and a noun. So, as a verb, it means to become absorbed in thought, according to Merriam-Webster's dictionary, especially to think about something carefully and thoroughly. And so, I think that that is getting you into that frame of mind, which is where you're just sort of free associating, you're letting the creativity flow. And to use it as a transitive verb, you would say something like, I could sell the house, she mused, but where would I go? So notice how, even when we're using it as a verb, there's kind of a free association attached with it. And now let's go to the really exciting use of the word muse as a noun, a state of deep thought or dreamy abstraction. See, that's where I think it gets interesting. When you start getting abstract, dreamy, interesting things start to occur. And so, actually, what was quite interesting was then to find out that a muse is supposed to be any of the nine sister goddesses in Greek mythology presiding over song and poetry and the arts and sciences. So that's not something you usually think about. You usually don't think about the arts and sciences as being similar processes. But actually, if you take a look at great scientists and ask them how they came up with their greatest discoveries, it usually involved some sort of creative leap, something that didn't go A, B, C, but actually went like A, B, H. There was some leap of inspiration, leap of understanding, and they often had to go back and see, how did I get there? Because I understand I was going along this path, but then it looked like I jumped over this enormous chasm and I've come to a new place of understanding. The muse can also refer to one's loved ones, as oftentimes um, a source of inspiration. For example, you might hear this said, the writer's beloved wife was his muse. Now, that gets into love, which I think can also be a muse. But love is not really part of the analytical part of the brain. It's part of the creative part of the brain. And I would argue part of the divine part of the brain. So, whether you're working in the arts or the sciences, I think that we're trying to access the divine, the things that are beyond us, the things that we don't currently understand. And we may not get that through an analytical process. We may need to get that through a more creative process, a more meditative process, more free associative process. And they've got another kind of interesting things here. Muse on this. The word muse comes from the Anglo French verb muser, meaning to gape, to idle. The image evoked is one of a thinker so absorbed in thought as to be unconsciously open mouthed. And so when you read great artists and what they say about the creative process, they often talk about being divinely inspired. Now, I'll leave it up to you whether that's divinely inspired or maybe some process of the human brain that we don't fully understand. But I do know what that state is like. Um, the noun muse, which in lowercase refers to a source of inspiration, and when capitalized to one of the sister goddesses of Greek mythology, has no etymological link. That word comes from the Greek musa, the ultimate Greek origin of the word museum, translates as of the muses. So, next time you're going to a museum of science, remember it's based on the Greek gods. And so I was thinking about what are other instances in which it seems I've gone into a flow state. And I want to ask you if you had this experience of meeting somebody new and whether they became a friend, a lover, or a spouse, whether there was something very interesting about that first meeting, something unexpected, a way in which you kind of resonated with that person, which was different than meeting other people. I had thought about the meeting that I had when I met my wife. And I don't know what was going on, but I felt that in the weeks and months before I met my wife, I felt like I was in something of a flow state. I wasn't worried about dating. I wasn't, feeling good or bad about relationships that had not worked out. I was just letting myself go. And I was just letting myself free associate and just letting things happen. And one of the things that I just always mark as a unique experience is that I remember that my cousin had set me up with a young woman, and we'd gone out on a couple dates, and she was very nice, but I didn't feel any sparks with her. But when she started talking about her friend, whose father was a quote, shoe dog, I noticed that something happened in me. And it was almost as if I got tapped on the shoulder, and my guardian angel was saying, pay attention to that shoe dog thing. And then when I met the daughter of the shoe dog, well, she just blew all my circuitry. And uh, that was 33 years ago. And I am still with that daughter of the shoe dog. And we hear all this advice about relationships as them being things that you need to work on. And maybe that's true for a lot of people, but I've never felt like I had to work on the relationship with my wife. And we talk about it often. And I ask her the same thing. Does she feel like she needs to work on the relationship with me? And she says, no, I don't. It is true. I need to give time for that relationship to work most effectively and for us to be close. But it's not in the realm of work. It's just putting that time aside so that you can genuinely enjoy each other. And so I've had this experience also in work situations. Now, when I was young, I was always very verbal, always very literate, very, very much a reader. And so I believe that since I was a strong reader, that made me a good public speaker because I had always a lot of thoughts going on in my brain. And so then when I spoke, I seemed to speak with some authority and some coherence. But what people put onto me is that I had to figure out how to monetize that. I had to figure out how that could serve me. And so the things that people projected onto me is that I should become an attorney, that I should go into politics. And yeah, there were some times where I thought, oh, that would be very interesting. Um, However, the practice of law is not what you think it is. And in fact, you are generally not speaking, you're not persuading, which is what I like to do. You are really bullying. So, in the choice between being a lawyer and a bully, or a teacher and a persuader, I found that I was just naturally more attracted to teaching. It just went along with my nature. My nature is not to bully people, but to share information and encourage them on a specific path. So, between my two careers of law and teaching, I would say I was a much more successful teacher than I ever was a lawyer. But also, by the same token, my teaching did not seem to be work to me as did my law practice. So, I think that is something that people will hopefully consider. And as one of my previous guests, Peter Clino, said, it's great to discover that you have an aptitude for something, but you also want to figure out how you can make it pay. So, since I like to talk, well, yeah, teaching is a way that I can use that skill to the best of my ability. And I believe I did in my teaching career. Now, turning to my writing, the question is, what kind of writer should I be? Should I be a nonfiction writer? I've published 17 books of nonfiction. Or actually, I'm sorry, it's 18 now. And I've published three novels, and I'm working on my fourth one. What is interesting is that a lot of people are really enjoying the novels that I've written. Now, do they go easier than the nonfiction books? No, I have to say that both of them seem to uh, uh, be equally as easy for me to write. I enjoy both nonfiction and the fiction, but there is something which is uniquely liberating about a fictional book, meaning that although I am usually writing historical fiction, I get to make things up, but I get to make things up within kind of the narrow parameters of what actually happened in that time. So I'm discovering my own flow state in writing. And so, just something to be aware of. I think that as you are going through your life, it's probably a good idea to say, in what instances am I really enjoying things? And in what instances do things seem to come easier to me than they come to for other people? One of the best stories that I like to talk about in terms of flow state and expectations is the story of the eyeglass company Warby Parker, and specifically the story told by Adam Grant in his book Originals about how do people discover their maximum creativity. And so Adam Grant has just this great story because the founders of Warby Parker were actually students of his in his MBA program. And Adam Grant, being a fairly successful investor, would encourage his students to come and pitch him their ideas. And if he found it to be, you know, to have promise, he would invest in it. Well, the guys who came up with the idea for Warby Parker pitched him. And I just want to read a little bit about the account, what happened, how Adam Grant decided not to invest in Warby Parker, why he did that, and the mistakes that he realized that he made. And so this was in his 2016 TED Talk, The Surprising Habits of Original Thinkers. So from this, I got this from Copilot. So that's my source. Um, uh, Adam Grant shared a personal story about a missed investment opportunity. 7 years ago, a student approached him to invest in a startup selling glasses online. The team had taken internships, lined up backup jobs, and still hadn't launched a working website by launch day. Grant declined, later learning the company was Warby Parker, which went on to become one of the world's most innovative companies, valued at over $1 billion. Yes, he missed out on investing in $1 billion company. But let me set the stage, because I usually showed this TED Talk to my students. And so imagine that you are a potential investor and you've got, these young kids coming in, pitching you an idea. And you have an idea about what your model young entrepreneur should be like. They should be cocky. They should be throwing everything into it. They should have this clear vision of exactly what's going to happen. And so the guys who came in and pitched Warby Parker didn't seem to be anything like that. They hadn't completely finished their business plan. the website wasn't working. They were still kind of uncertain about exactly how they were going to do this business. And so Adam Grant threw him out of the office, saying, you guys obviously are not going to be successful because you're not throwing yourselves in 100% to this business. What he came to realize is that he was wrong, that your ideal investor is not somebody who's full of themselves with confidence. Your ideal investor should be, or your ideal entrepreneur should be somebody who's somewhat cautious, who understands they may not know everything, and is open to new ideas. And so Adam Grant, as he talks about it, looked at a very famous inventor duo in history, Orville and Wilbur Wright. So Orville and Wilbur Wright, as you know, invented the first airplane. And you would have thought that after that first flight at Kitty Hawk in North Carolina in 1903, they would have gone full time into making airplanes. No, they didn't, because there wasn't a business there yet. Instead, what they did was they continued their profitable bicycle business until such time as they could devote themselves 100% to airplane production, which I think was around 1910, 1911. So for 7 years, they kept that bicycle business. And so the same thing Adam Grant realized is true when we're attempting to do something new. We probably shouldn't go 100% into it. We should make sure we're going to be taken care of. Are we going to pay our bills? It's great to have a dream, but you don't want to die of starvation before you achieve the dream. So, in talking about the lessons that Adam Grant learned from these Warby Parker founders, I just love this. Kind of just as we think about doing great things, and I really want this channel to be about you being your very best self. And so if you want to be your very best self, we have to look at people who have achieved greatness and say, what lessons can we learn from them? So again, this is from Copilot, so this isn't anything I created. Grant realized he had misunderstood the traits of originals, people who not only have new ideas, but also take action to champion them. He studied these thinkers and distilled 3 surprising habits. Number 1, embracing failure. The greatest originals are the ones who fail the most because they try the most. They need many bad ideas to find a few good ones. Grant says you need a lot of bad ideas in order to get a few good ones. 2, moderate procrastination. And in his book, Originals, Grant talks a lot about this, which is they did these studies which looked at the creativity of student projects. And what they found is that those eager beavers who, upon getting an assignment, raced to finish it, were not as creative as those who gave it a little bit of time, who engaged in moderate procrastination, meaning that they just let the ideas sit with themselves for a while, marinate. And those people who engaged in a bit of moderate procrastination were usually the ones who came up with the most creative solutions. So number 2, moderate procrastination. Grant calls himself a precrastinator, starting early but not rushing. He found that moderate procrastination can boost creativity by up to 16%, allowing more time for idea incubation. Examples include Leonardo da Vinci's 16-year work on the Mona Lisa and Martin Luther's last-minute revisions to his I Have a Dream speech. So this is a great story from Adam Grant's book. and I didn't know it, but right up until he delivered his I Have a Dream speech, Martin Luther King Jr. was making revisions to it. In fact, some of the most quoted lines from Martin Luther King Jr.'s I Have a Dream speech were additions he made in the half hour before he gave that very important speech. So never think that you have to finish things early. In fact, I would argue you need to wait a while to make sure your very best ideas come to you. 3, managing self doubt differently. Originals feel fear and doubt like everyone else, but they channel it into action. Self doubt paralyzes, while idea doubt motivates testing and experimentation. They use doubt to try new things rather than avoid them. Yeah, so this is something that I've seen with a lot of people, and I see it with my fellow writers, which is they'll say, I have this idea, I'm not sure about it, I'm always going, okay, great, now do it and fail, and that's something that I'm trying to embrace. For example, as I've said, I'm very popular with my nonfiction books. As you can see, I've got, a whole bunch of them here. And publishers know that if they've got a hot story, they can call me, and in 2 to 3 months, I will give them a book. That's all great. But I'm interested in branching out. I'm interested in fiction. I'm interested in things that I care about. And, I'll develop some of my titles on my own. So, for example, with my recent book, This Never Happened, A Call Girl in DC, it is a book which I generated the idea for because I felt that there aren't enough women reading books about politics. Well, women don't want to read books about politics by and large. Women like to read romance stories. Let's see if do I have it there? No. Where do I have it? Oh, there it is. Right behind catastrophic disclosure. There we go. Here she is. This never happened. Luridly entertaining, says Kirkus Reviews. This never happened. A call girl in DC. All right. So this is a new idea. I'm basically writing a romance story, or I'm pitching a romance story, but in actuality, it's a sharp political satire. So hopefully what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be getting women reading this book, looking for romance, and finding a political book, which hopefully makes them think about things that have gone wrong in our system. So the key takeaway that you should have and Adam Grant have is that Warby Parker's success showed Grant that originals often look different from conventional success stories. They may be slow to start, embrace risk, but it's a calculated risk. It's not rolling the dice. It's not putting all your eggs in one basket. It's like being the Wright brothers, and until the airplane business takes off, they keep the bicycle business, and they persist through setbacks. These habits, when combined, can unlock creativity and drive meaningful change. So, what you should be thinking about in finding the flow is just relax a little bit. And I think that that's one of the problems of those people who get all anxious when they're given a task. They think, oh my God, I got to solve this now. I have this amount of time and I have to do it. And I think you just need to relax and start to go with the flow. Set aside some time in order to let those good ideas come to you. When I was getting started in my book writing career, my wife would always make fun of the fact that I would set up a timer for about 45 minutes and I wouldn't get up out of the chair until that timer went off. And she said, well, it doesn't seem like you're writing that whole amount of time. And I'm like, no, but my ass is sitting in the chair and I'm letting ideas come to me. And since I am here, I want to get something done. So now when I'm stuck, I'll fall back on the same tactics and I'll just set a timer and wait for the magic to come. So I encourage you, be bold, be brave, feel free to procrastinate, but get stuff done. At the end of the day, you should be able to recall those things that you got accomplished during the day, which you had not accomplished at the beginning of the day. So that's my advice on finding your flow. Hopefully, this is not the best part of your day. Hopefully, the best part of your day is to come when you will have actual conversations with real people in front of you. Because as you know, that is the real joy of life, not listening to some guy on a podcast. Have a great day.